The relay on the hill trembled between wrong and right. Not much. The width of a hair. Enough to break the pattern if they forced it. Enough to keep the pattern if they held it with care. Sarah's fingers rested on Arya's wrist. "Hold," she said, steady as a metronome. "No push." Arya met her eyes and gave a small nod without changing her tone. Her voice stayed thin, clean, and gentle. It did not grow bright. It did not try to be brave. It stayed true. Cole did not lean in. He did the opposite. He took one slow step back from the rail so the grid would not pull extra weight through him, to fix a problem that patience could fix. He kept the band warm on his chest and opened his hands so everyone could see he would not force the line. On the hill, the apprentice lifted his arms high again, making the simple circle and throat sign for the streets below. The people in the lower rows copied him. Roof to roof, window to window, porch to porch, hands rose and shaped the circle. It looked like lanterns being held up to show a path. No one shouted. They breathed in for 2, out for 2, and gave 1, soft tone at the end as if they were telling the relay, "Here is home." 0920 Euro 08. The storm beyond the ridge pressed its edge to the hills like a hand against glass. The probe's red points formed a clear arc now. Machines tested the upper air with patient curiosity. They did not know they were being met by a city that had learned how to breathe together. Kellen read a quick note from the hill. "They say, the drift is shrinking," she said. "They ask us not to help, only to wait." Sarah's mouth softened. "We wait," she said. The king stood with his hand on the rail, palm down, lending steadiness with no words. Counselor Leth held her pen, above the paper, and did not write. She simply watched the line at Dea's board and the princess's face, ready to record the truth when the truth settled. The relay on the hill moved the last half-step the city had asked for. It did not snap into place like a trap. It settled, like a bowl set flat on a table after a long, careful carry. Row 5, Siro, Saro. 4 areas' tone did not rise. She eased but did not drop. Cole felt the band cool by 1 small degree. He did not let relief make his legs soft. He held the shape. Or 3A low chord woke under the city. The thin threads in the floor brightened enough for every eye to follow them. The threads met at the main node and drew a clean circle of light that stood 4 hands high around the ring like a short wall of mourning. 2. The numbers reached their last breath. The city went quiet in a way that was not empty. Every street, room, stair, and roof seemed to lean toward the same center. The ring lifted a smooth column of light the height of a person, and then the height of 2 people, and then the height of 3. It did not roar. It did not flash. It rose like fog that knows exactly where to stand. Sarah's hand stayed on Arya. Arya stayed steady. Cole kept his hold. Dea's gauges crossed their first marks and reached their second and stopped there like faithful dogs obeying a hand. "Grid aligned," Leth said, voice soft, eyes bright. The dome formed. You could see it only if you looked sideways the way you see a field of heat on a road in summer. It spread from the palace like a clear skin, moved over roofs, dipped around towers, climbed gently over the ridge, and joined itself above the city. The dome did not trap air. It did not hum loud. It sang under hearing, the way a shell sings when you hold it to your ear. People under it could breathe as they wished. The light did not weigh on them. It let them be. On the hill, the apprentice lowered his arms and laughed once, a quiet sound that broke into a short sob of pure relief. The teacher squeezed his shoulder. The field hands looked up at the dome and then at their own palms and smiled like builders who see a roof stand true. Arya stopped when Sarah touched her arm. She did not fall. She did not sway. She stood as if the ground under her feet had promised to hold. Cole took 1 half-step toward her in case she needed a hand. She did not reach for him. She breathed for herself, and then took the cup Kellen held out. Warm water. 1 slow sip. Above the ridge, the first line of the machine swarm reached the dome's outer edge. It did not hit it like a wall. It touched it like a blind thing learning a new shape. The small scouts moved along the curve, tasting the field the way your tongue tastes a battery, careful, confused. The dome did not throw them away. It did not burn. It did one simple thing very well. It refused the match. The pattern outside could not fit the pattern inside. The scouts turned their heads, if heads are what those little bodies had, and tried, again with a different rhythm. The dome answered with the same quiet no. In the main chamber, the high screen drew neat lines that showed the contact points. Each red dot became a small ring, spun and faded. The next row of dots pressed and spun and faded. The machine swarm had come to map, cut, and feed. The grid gave them nothing to grip. Do we raise the level? An aide asked, eyes wide, voice low. No, Dea said. We keep it right where it is. Force is not our tool today. Sarah looked at Arya's color and nodded. We hold the low song, she said. We rest. We do not chase small spikes. If a spike grows, I will say so. Cole's breath ran deep and even. He felt the field on his skin the way you feel the sun when a cloud moves. He could hold more, but he did not offer more. The plan did not need it now. The plan needed reliability, not heroics. On the hill, the apprentice watched the first contact and then turned to the group. We don't push, he said, repeating Sarah's rule as if it were a law of weather. We keep the tone. We keep it soft. They kept it soft. The swarm did what swarms do when they fail to find edges. It spread wider. It tried new angles. It changed spacing. The dome kept the same answer in the same shape. It did not care about the machine's small tricks. It was not a single person's will. It was the field of a whole city that had decided, in 1,000 kitchens and porches and yards and roofs, to breathe the same breath for a time, and to trust a gentle voice and a stubborn hold more than old habits. A runner came with a message. From the east farms, the outer orchard had lost one windmill blade to a gust. No fire, no break in the ring there. A group of neighbors had already tied it down with 2 ropes and a joke and gone back to their breathwork. Another runner came from the North Market. The cloth seller had taken down his tall bolts and set them in a line so the ring could taste the evening air. In the shade of the bolts, a grandmother had taught 5 small children the slow count using dried beans. The bean pile, the note said, was now very neat and very proud. As the day slid into night, the dome held like a promise kept. The saboteurs did not vanish. They stepped out of shadow because there was nowhere left to hide and because the work did not stop to hunt them. At the cooling tower valve, an officer from the king's own loyalists, thin, sharp, eyes red with lack of sleep, walked up to Dea with his hands open. I closed the supply yesterday, he said. I feared we would trap the city under a lid we could not lift. I thought if the machine stayed small we would be safe. He looked at the dome with something like shame and something like wonder. I was wrong. I am sorry. Dea did not spit, scold, or lift her chin. She pointed at a coil of hose that needed a new coupling and said, Hold that while I clamp. He held it. She clamped. Now carry water, she said. He carried water. No one cheered. No one jeered. When the bucket line took its rhythm, the old guard gave the officer a small nod that meant, Welcome to the work. Counselor Leth added one sentence to the wall of rules at Stone Orchard. Fear can speak, but it cannot touch the valve. People liked that line. They started to say it when they felt their hands shake. Near midnight, the swarm did something new. The first tier fell back, and the second tier came forward in a straight, calm phalanx. It looked like a parade of tiny knives. The dome did not bristle or dim. It smoothed. It offered no corners to catch. The knives lost their parade. They wandered like dust. Arya led for 10 minutes and stopped. Then Mara, the choir leader, stood at the main node and led the same slow tone for 3 minutes. Then Jax, the foreman for 2, then the baker for 1. The grid needed very little now that it had been brought into tune. It needed a shepherd more than a singer. It needed to feel a human pattern close by to confirm that the field had not drifted. The city took turns being that pattern. Cole stayed at Araya's side through the night. When he left her for a few minutes, He left her with Sarah, Kellen, and 2 teachers who had quiet hands and low voices. He walked the ring, checked hoses, checked valves, checked faces. He drank warm water when Sarah shoved a cup into his hand without asking. He swallowed 2 spoonfuls of broth when Kellen gave him the look that said, "Do it now." He slept 12 minutes sitting on a stool with his back to a warm wall while the king himself stood at the rail and watched the gauges with a mason's patience. Near dawn, the swarm reached its most crowded posture, and then, like a flock that suddenly hears a sound it does not know, shuddered, folded, and began to lift. Not fast, not in fear, in confusion. The pattern outside had failed to fit the pattern inside for too many hours. Whatever mind ran those small bodies understood that its maps would not match here. The red points on the screen moved away in a thin line that broke and broke again until the probe showed only weather. The dome did not drop at once. It stayed for 1 more hour, warm and light, an open hand over the city. Cole stood at the edge of the throne hall with his hands behind his back and his helmet tucked under his arm. The hall was bright with soft light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Hundreds of thin crystal pillars rose like frozen rain. Blue banners hung above, showing the royal seal of the Valor, a gentle star drawn with 7 lines. The war was finished. The treaty was signed. Today was not a day for blades. Today was for words, for gifts, and for promises that should be kept. He felt the eyes of the court on him. Some were curious, some were cold, and some had the tired look of people who had seen too many bad years. Cole kept his posture calm and straight. He had stood in worse places. He had waited in quieter ones. The air smelled like clean metal and a flower he could not name. Far beyond the open arches, clouds drifted over the city like white ships. A voice like a bell carried through the hall. "Human soldier Cole Gardner," the herald said. "By the peace accords, the crown grants you 1 reward of your choosing. Speak your wish." People leaned forward. Cole heard whispers. Earthmen usually asked for land rights or trade shares, or a closed case reopened for justice. Others asked for star grants, paths in space that only they could use for a time. He could ask for any of those things. He had a list in his pocket with notes from his unit in case he needed guidance. He did not reach for it. The king sat on a simple seat of pale stone. He looked older than the last time Cole had seen him, but his eyes were steady. Beside the king stood his council and his daughters. Most of them wore the white tunics of ceremony. One wore a soft blue dress and a thin shawl around her shoulders. She was smaller than the others and held the shawl with both hands as if it helped her breathe. Cole knew her name. Everyone did. Princess Arya. Stories about her moved through the city as quick as street wind. Some said she was too weak to live long. Some said she was sharp as a knife and quiet as snowfall. Some said both could be true. Cole lifted his chin and spoke so his words were clear. "Your Majesty, I choose Princess Arya." The hall went silent in one breath, and then filled with 10 different kinds of noise. Gasps, shouts, a laughter that stopped as soon as it began, a rustle of clothing like a wave breaking. The chief guard stepped forward with a hand to his sidearm. One of the counselors said something too fast for the translator pin on Cole's collar to catch. Cole did not move. He had expected this. He had planned his next sentence for days. He raised his hand, palm open, to show peace. "I do not claim her," he said. "I request to use my reward to give her protection, legal protection, from being forced into any experiment or duty. She does not choose for herself. I request the right to escort her to a safe place of her choosing for a short time. I request that she be free to decide how to spend that time." The sound in the hall shifted. It did not vanish, but it softened. The guard lowered his hand by an inch. The translator caught up with the counselor, and the man's words became clear in Cole's ear. "This is a trick. It must be a trick." Others argued back that the treaty allowed any reward, even one that was not gold or land. The king did not speak right away. He looked at Arya. She stood very still. Her shawl trembled, but her eyes were deep and present, like a person thinking 3 thoughts at once and choosing wisely among them. She stepped forward and bowed to Cole in the Valor way, one hand to her heart, one to her mouth, then to her temple. "Why me?" she asked. Her voice was thin, but even. Cole chose simple truth. "Because you are under pressure," he said. "Because I heard that the Relic Council wants you to test an old machine that hurts people who stand near it. Because you drew a pattern I have seen in the ruins on the North Ridge. Because I think your life should be yours to guide." There was a pause. The princess blinked once, as if clearing dust from her sight. She looked to the council. Several of them looked away. "Who told you about the machine?" one counselor asked. "A soldier hears many things," Cole said. "Most are rumors. Some are warnings. I do not need to prove the talk is true to ask for this protection. My request is lawful." The king lifted his hand and the hall grew quiet again. "Princess," he said, "do you wish to speak privately before I answer?" Arya nodded. The king glanced at Cole. "Do you consent to a short pause, human soldier?" "I do," Cole said. They moved behind a screen of woven silver threads. A soft field hummed to block sound, and the world outside became a blur of blue and white. Cole stood 3 paces away so the space would feel open. Arya leaned on a narrow rail. He noticed how she kept her fingers flat to calm a shake. He did not look away. He did not stare. He tried to be like steady ground. "Why did you really choose me?" she asked again, but this time her voice had a cooler note. It was the voice of a person who had been handled too much and trusted too little. Cole answered in the same way. "Because you sketched a sequence on a page," he said. "I saw it when a court painter carried it through the East Corridor 2 days ago. I have the same sequence in my field notes from a ruin on the ridge. I think the two are linked. If I am wrong, then at least you will have a few days without orders you did not choose. If I am right, then we can study the pattern in safety and in peace." Arya considered him. "You are certain I drew it?" "You signed your name in the corner," he said. It was neat. The pattern was not neat. It looked like something felt, not something measured. She looked down at the rail and smiled without showing her teeth. "That is true," she said. "I hear the pattern when I cannot sleep." "That is not a reason to be used," Cole said. "That is a reason to be careful." "You think the council will force me," she said. "I think they are tired and proud and afraid," he said, "and fear grabs the nearest lever." Arya's smile faded. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with a hard light. "I do not want to be a lever," she said. "Then let me make a space around you," Cole said. "Just for a while, just long enough to set your own pace." "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing. You owe me nothing," he said. "This is my reward. I'm spending it on time and choice. Both are yours." She drew a slow breath and let it out. "I do not know if I trust you," she said, "but I want what you offered." "That is enough," he said. They returned to the hall. The king listened when Arya spoke. She said she would accept the human's request. She said she would go where she chose and meet who she chose for a short number of days. The king asked how many days. Cole chose 8. It felt like a complete shape in his mind. Enough to breathe, not long enough to insult the court. The king nodded once. "The charter of choice is granted," he said. "The soldier's reward is thus spent. Princess Arya will be under protection of the peace accords for 8 days and nights. No order will bind her without her spoken consent." He looked to the herald. "Mark it and light the seal." The herald touched a plate on the floor. A circle of soft light climbed the air around Cole and Arya and then faded. The court let out its breath. Some faces were angry, some puzzled, and some, especially the younger ones, looked relieved, as if a heavy story had changed direction. Ceremony moved forward. Gifts were exchanged. Words of goodwill were said. Cole stayed near the back and waited for the stream of people to thin. He saw Arya lose color as the day wore on. He kept a respectful distance and watched for signs that she needed a seat. When she almost stumbled on a step, he only moved enough to be close if she called. She set her jaw and kept walking. When she reached a bench, she sat with her shoulders forward and her hands resting open on her knees. A court healer approached and greeted Cole with a small bow. "You are the one who won 8 days," the healer said. "I am Sarah. I have cared for the princess since she was a child. She will not like me saying this, but she needs rest every 2 hours." Cole nodded. "Thank you," he said. "I will not push her. We can go very slowly." Sarah studied him with a look that could cut and bless at once. "Many promise softness," she said. "Few deliver it." "I know," Cole said. "I have seen both." Arya looked at them. "I am not glass," she said, with a little force. "You are not," Sarah said. "You are a person with a body, and it tells you what it needs. That is not glass, that is wisdom." Arya's mouth softened again. She stood and faced Cole. "I would like to go to the East Garden," she said. They walked through an arcade where the wind made a low singing sound. The garden was a small green square hidden inside the palace. Heavier trees grew there, with flat leaves that shone like coins. A long table held ink, brushes, and paper. Arya sat on a stone seat and pulled the shawl closer. Cole stood at the table and looked at the sheets. Some held gentle scenes: a bridge, the wing of a mountain bird, a bowl of water with light across it. Others were full of the same pattern from the corridor, lines that curved and repeated and tightened, like waves that were also words. "I hear it when the palace goes quiet," Arya said, watching his face as he scanned the pages. "It is not music. It is more like a hum from a string you cannot see." Cole took out his field book and set it beside her drawings. His pages were rough, copied by hand during a cold night in the ruins. The shapes matched. Not perfectly, but enough. Her curves were softer, more living. His were rigid, framed by the broken stone he had traced. But both spoke in the same direction. "Where did you see this?" she asked. Morning came with a soft gold light that slipped through the thin curtains of Arya's room and touched the floor like warm water. Cole stood in the corridor with Sarah, while the palace stirred around them in quiet waves. The lamps above, no longer, pulsed, but there was a hush in the air that felt like the pause between heartbeats. Guards spoke more softly than usual. Servants moved as if not to wake an old sleeper. Sarah checked a small slate and then nodded toward the door. "She slept," the healer said. "Not long, but it was deep. That is rare for her. She is stronger in the morning when she sleeps like that." Cole kept his voice low. "Thank you for staying," he said. Sarah gave him a dry smile. "I would not miss the moment the palace decides to breathe in time with my patient." She looked past him, down the long hall. "You felt it too?" "Yes," he said. "Like a field around us. Not dangerous. Simply present." The door slid open. Arya stood there with her shawl folded over one arm. She wore a simple gray dress and flat shoes. Her hair was pulled back with a thin band of silver. She looked small, but there was a clear line in her eyes, the line a person has when she has made up her mind. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning, Highness," Sarah said. "How is your breath?" "Easy," Arya said. She glanced at Cole. "I am ready to go." "Go where?" Sarah asked, though her tone said she already knew. "The outpost," Arya said. "The one for safe research, the soldier spoke of it." Cole nodded once. "Stone Orchard," he said. "It is outside the city by the East Vineyards. It is quiet. It has a clean lab field and good food. Best of all, it has thick walls and honest rules." Sarah folded her arms. "You will need permission to leave the palace." "The Charter of Choice grants it," Cole said. "I filed a notice at dawn. The king has signed. We travel by a small convoy with light escort. No more than we need." Arya looked down the hall where the lamps had pulsed the night before. "I want to go before the council comes with more polite requests," she said. "They will come either way," Sarah said, "but perhaps the air will be kinder there." They moved with unhurried steps. Cole walked one pace behind Arya and one ahead of Sarah. Servants bowed as they passed. The east gate stood open to a clear morning sky. Two small ground cars waited with their doors up like folded wings. The drivers wore simple gray and held their caps in their hands, nervous and proud. Cole checked the convoy. One car for the princess and healer, one for Cole and two Valor escorts chosen by Arya herself. No guns on display, no loud banners, quiet strength. As they rolled through the city, Arya watched the streets like a person memorizing a map she loved. Children with bright scarves ran along garden walls. Old men played a game with carved stones and did not look up. Bakers drew warm trays from ovens. The skyline to the east lifted like a shallow bowl toward the ridge. Cole spoke only when she asked. "Why is it called Stone Orchard?" she said. "Someone long ago planted trees there," he said. "But the wind was wrong and the soil too thin. The trees died and left a grid of roots like a map you can walk. Under the grid they found a room in the stone. Now it is the lab. A kind lab. Not the kind that rushes." Arya smiled at the phrase. "A kind lab," she said. "I like how that sounds." They reached the low walls and the quiet gate of Stone Orchard by mid-morning. The outpost did not look like a lab. It looked like a small farmhouse with wide eaves and thick columns, a few sheds, and a circle of ground that had been cleared down to clean rock. Vines surrounded the place in green rows. Wind touched the leaves and made a sound like soft paper. A gray-haired woman stepped from the shade and lifted a hand in greeting. "Welcome," she said. "Princess, healer, soldier. I am Kellen, the steward here. We follow rules. We also follow kindness." Arya bowed slightly. "Then I am in the right place," she said. Kellen led them inside. The main room held long tables, clean tools, paper stacked by height, and quiet lights that hummed in a pitch almost too low to hear. One wall held a slate with a single sentence written in neat hand. "No one is a lever." Arya stopped to read it. "Who wrote that?" Kellen looked at Cole. "It was brought by a human," she said. "He asked to write it on the wall so we would see it each day." We agreed. Arya did not look at Cole, but her mouth softened. They set Arya in a soft-backed chair by the light. Kellen brought a bowl of warm water and a cup of clear broth. Sarah arranged her instruments on a tray and took the princess's pulse, watched it, and wrote a number on the slate. Cole placed his field book and Arya's sketches side by side on a table and weighed the corners with smooth stones. "Before we do anything," Cole said, "we set our rules. Princess, you speak them. We follow." Arya thought for a moment. "No device is activated without my consent," she said. "If the healer says stop, we stop. I choose who is in the room. I can ask for quiet. If I say we rest, we rest. If I want to go outside, we go outside. And if I want to go home, we go home." Kellen nodded. "All written," she said. She wrote each line on a small card and placed it at the edge of the table like a border. "And one more rule from this house," she added. "Every hour we pause for 2 minutes of steady breath." Sarah approved with a small sound. Cole hid a smile. Arya pulled a fresh sheet of paper close. "I will draw the pattern again," she said, slowly. "You can copy beside me. If the palace lights last night were the same rhythm, then perhaps the map is not on the page but in the air." She began to draw. Her lines moved with care, not as if she were copying a shape, but as if she were remembering the feeling of it, with her hand. Cole matched her pace, tracing his own version with a blunt pencil. Sarah wrote the time, the room temperature, and Arya's breath rate. Kellen wrote too, but her notes were different. Who came in, what they carried, where they stood when they left. It was a kind of honesty you could read later without confusion. An hour passed. Kellen rang a small chime and they stopped to breathe. In for 4 counts, out for 6. The room lifted and settled with them like a boat on a calm lake. When they began again, Cole took a small wrapped object from his pack. He set it on the table but did not remove the cloth. "This is from the ridge," he said. "We found it near the cut stone. It is a small relic, but it is safe when wrapped and silent when not invited. If you want, Princess, we can place it near the drawing and see if anything changes." Arya looked at the cloth bundle. There was no hunger in her gaze, only careful interest. "I want to try," she said, "but we go slow." Sarah moved closer, ready. Kellen opened a window so the air would feel fresh. Cole folded the cloth back with gentle fingers. Inside lay a smooth, dark shape like a river stone with one flat side. A thin line crossed it like a closed eyelid. It did not glow. It did not, It simply looked like a thing that did not belong to any market in the world. Cole placed it on the table near Arya's drawings. Nothing happened. Everyone breathed. Wind lifted the edge of a paper and set it down again. A bee wandered at the open window and then left. Arya set her hand near the stone but did not touch it. "Hello," she said in a tone that was almost a joke and almost not. "We do not wish to hurt each other." The line on the stone opened like an eye. A small ring of light appeared around it, no brighter than a watch face. A soft tone sounded, low and slow, and then faded. Sarah's hand tightened on the back of Arya's chair. "Pulse?" "Steady," Arya said. Her fingers trembled, but not with fear. "It feels like standing in shallow water when a wave passes and pulls the sand around your feet." Cole leaned in but did not reach for the relic. He watched the ring of light. The circle was not a full ring. It had a gap, and across the gap a thin bar glowed with a second light. Letters appeared in the air above the stone. They were not Valor letters and not human script. They were simple marks in a clean order. Cole did not know why he knew, but he knew they were not meant to be read as words. They were meant to be matched. Arya made a tiny sound and touched the paper where her pattern curved. She began to hum, very soft, the way she had in the garden. The ring of light widened at once. The thin bar across the gap grew bright. 2 new marks appeared above the stone, then 4, then 8. Sarah watched Arya's face and counted under her breath. Kellen wrote the numbers exactly. Cole's translator pen clicked once, twice. It was not translating language, it was catching on meaning. "Roll detected," it said in his ear. "Tuner." A moment later, a second tone sounded out of the stone. This one was even lower. The light pressed outward like a held note. Cole felt the hair on his arms lift. The air around his head seemed to tighten. He did not hum, he breathed. The ring of light shifted until the gap faced him, and the thin bar threw a pale line across the table toward his chest. "Roll detected," the translator whispered. "Anchor species." Sarah looked sharply at Cole. "What does that mean?" "I do not know yet," he said. He let his breath slow on purpose. He did not move his hands. He did not look away from Arya. Arya's hum faltered, then steadied again. The ring of light read her and then read Cole and then seemed to read the room itself. A new image formed in the air. It was not a map and not a sentence. It was 2 shapes, a soft curve like a hand on a harp string, and a straight line like a rope tied to a ship. Between them, a small symbol opened and closed like a flower. Kellen breathed out. 2 rolls, she said softly, as if she were standing in a temple, a tuner and an anchor. News moved through the city like light through water. By midday, the king knew about the thin storm beyond the ridge and the red points on the sky screen. He called for Arya, Sarah, Cole, Kellen, and Counselor Leth to come to a chamber under the palace. The message was short and plain. Bring your notes. Bring your calm. Bring the relic if you think it is safe. Stone Orchard packed in order. Kellen sealed the copies and sent them ahead to the archive. Sarah checked Arya's pulse, breath, and temperature and wrote each number with a neat hand. Cole wrapped the relic with care, then placed it inside a plain satchel. He carried the satchel himself. He did not let it out of his hands. They rode in 2 ground cars, quiet and fast. The road curved along the east wall and then dipped into the palace lane. Masses of people had gathered near the gates, not shouting, not pushing, just standing and watching the sky. No one needed to tell them the air had changed. You could feel it on the skin, a faint grain, a ripple too fine to see. The chamber under the palace did not feel like a throne hall. It felt like a workroom built inside a mountain. The floor was clean stone. The walls were smooth. In the middle stood a broad ring of metal set into the ground. as if a giant had pressed a hoop there long ago and the floor had grown around it. Thin lines ran from the ring to the walls and disappeared into neat conduits. Lamps hung low and steady. No banners, no bright colors, no sound except the small sounds people make when they breathe and shift and wait. The king stood at the far side with 3 guards. He wore simple gray, not court white. Councillor Leth waited near a long table covered with open paper, marked with columns, and waited at the corners with small stones. Engineers from the city's plane works stood by the wall. A few had dust on their collars as if they had come, at once from building sites. It was a good sign. The city had called the people who knew how to carry weight, set balance, and hold a line. "Welcome," the king said when they entered. "We meet to remove doubt. We will act on what proves true. Please, Steward Kellen, place your copies here. Healer Sarah, keep your patient first. Princess, you lead your own choices. Soldier, you asked for this trial by proof. Do you still ask it?" Cole set the satchel on the table and bowed his head a little. "I do, Your Majesty," he said. "We cannot fight a thin storm in a swarm with stories. We need proof. We need a method. We need to know if this ring is part of the ancient defense. If it is not, we stop and save our strength for other work. If it is, we learn how to use it without harm." Councillor Leth looked at the ring and then at Arya. "We do this under the Charter of Choice," she said. "Princess, speak the rules you want." Arya stood with her hands folded in front of her. Her voice was clear, though soft. "No device is activated without my consent," she said. "Sarah leads the stop calls. If I say stop, we stop. If the healer says stop, we stop. I choose who stands near me. I decide when we rest. We write everything. No one touches me or the relic without my permission." "Add one more," Sarah said. Arya nodded. "One more," she said. "There must be a way to share the load. I will not be asked to carry more than I can. If there is no safe way to share, we walk away." The king inclined his head. "Rules accepted," he said. He looked at the circle in the floor. "Engineers, tell us what we stand upon." A woman with a thick braid stepped forward. "We call it a node," she said. "We found this ring and the conduits under the palace when we repaired the old drains. It hums at night very softly. The Relic Council set seals on it. We have never activated it. It is tied to more rings across the city. We think it is a grid, but we do not know if the grid makes light, heat, or something else." Councillor Leth did not hide the truth. "We wanted to test it last year," she said. "Our models used strong input. The models said a person like the princess would be sensitive to it. We did not have a safe band to share the load. We did not have a human anchor to hold the other role. We waited. Waiting was wise. Today, we test with care." Cole opened the satchel and unwrapped the relic. He placed it on a low stand at the edge of the ring. The room seemed to lean a little toward it, the way a crowd leans when a child takes a first step. "Before we ask the ring to answer us," he said, "we will see if the small stone agrees we are in the right place." He looked at Arya. "Only if you want to try." Arya looked around the chamber, at the ring, the lines, the people, the patient lamps. She lifted her chin. "We try," she said. Sarah moved to her side. "I will count the breaths," the healer said. "We keep them slow." She looked at Cole. "Where do you stand to be useful and not in her light?" Cole glanced at the engineers. "Here," the braided woman said, pointing to a mark on the floor 2 steps from the ring. "The field is clean there, not too strong." Cole stood where she pointed. He set his boots on the mark and let his arms fall loose at his sides. He did not touch the ring. He watched Arya and matched his breath to Sarah's quiet count. Arya closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. She placed her hand near the small stone on its stand. She hums and whispers like a person easing a door that sticks. The ring of light opened at once. Letters formed in the air above it. The 2 shapes bloomed. The soft curve glowed. The straight line brightened with a low tone that spread through the floor like a breath in a sleeping house. Roles detected, the translator Pin murmured. Tuner, anchor species. The chamber held steady. No one rushed forward. No one cried out. Sarah counted. Arya matched the count with a hum that did not push. Cole matched with silence and slow lungs. The ring in the floor did not light. It lay quiet, as if it were a large animal listening from far away. Arya stopped when Sarah touched her arm. The light ring on the small stone closed like a calm eye. The letters faded. The air rose and fell once more and settled. Counselor Leth wrote 4 words on the open page in front of her. Field present. Roles true. She turned the page so the king could see. He nodded. The line of his mouth said both weight and relief. Now the ring, the king said. We need to know what it is. Cole felt his heart knock once, hard. He looked at the ring, and at Arya. We go very slowly, he said. We do not try to light the whole thing. We test its ear first. Princess, you can hum 3 steps. If the ring answers, we stop and listen. If it does not, we stop and rethink. Arya agreed. I will not push, she said. I do not want to win today. I want to learn. They moved to positions again. The engineers stood by rails with hands on the cutoffs that would break the lines if the field spiked. Sarah stood with her fingers on Arya's wrist and her eyes on the rise of Arya's chest. Counselor Leth held her pen ready. The king placed one hand on the metal rail by his side. He did not wear rings. His hand looked like a builder's hand, steady and strong. Arya began the 3 soft steps. The air listened. The room took the rhythm and held it. The ring in the floor gave no light. It gave a feeling, as if the ground had become a drumhead, and someone had set a cup of water on it. The water shook a little. That is enough, Sarah said at once. Stop. Arya stopped. The feeling faded. The ring stayed dark. Counselor Leth wrote again. Node present. Threshold high. She looked at the engineers. What is the lowest level at which the node will answer? The braided woman checked a gauge. It will answer if the pattern is matched by a certain strength, she said. We do not know the exact number. We can ask for a small step more. Arya looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Cole. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Cole gave voice to the thought that had sat in his chest since Stone Orchard. We may be asking the wrong way, he said. The small stone showed 2 shapes, 1 voice and 1 hold. We are giving the ring voice but not hold. I am standing, here and breathing, and the small stone knows me. The ring may not. It may need a clearer line. What line? The king asked. In the field kit, Cole said, we carry a simple neural band. It reads breath and heart, and sends a gentle signal to a second band so 2 people can match pace. We use it for med training and rescue. It is not deep. It does not cut. It is a belt of cloth with a small pack. It can share load by keeping rhythms aligned. If the ancient system expects a tuner and an anchor, this band may be enough to show the ring a clean pair. Sarah spoke at once. Is it safe for her? It is safe if we use it right, Cole said. I take the strain. If the field pulls, it pulls through me first. The band will make it easier for me to hold the line. If anything feels wrong, we stop. We remove the band and walk away. There was a small storm at the table in soft voices. Engineers asked quick questions about the band's levels, frequencies, and isolation. Counselor Leth asked about consent and rules. Sarah asked about a new stop signal that would cut both band and ring without delay. The king asked no questions. He watched the talk and weighed something behind his eyes. Arya listened and then raised her hand. The room quieted at once. I consent, she said. We set the band. We keep every rule. I choose who stands near me. I choose when we stop. Sarah's mouth pressed tight for a heartbeat, then softened. Then we do it, she said, and I keep my hand on the stop. Cole took the band from his kit. It looked almost too simple for all the talk it had caused. A wide cloth strap with a small smooth pack that glowed faintly when it woke. He set one strap around his chest over his shirt. The clock above the ring kept counting in clean, patient numbers. Every face in the chamber learned to check it without letting fear climb into the throat. After the trial by proof, the king gave one order that sounded like many. Open the windows. Open the schedule. Open the city. The grid would not be a secret machine hidden in a cellar. It would be a thing the people could see and feel and help. By noon, runners moved through the markets with simple cards in their hands. On one side, the card said, 2 breaths in, 2 breaths out. One soft tone. On the other side, they said, no one is a lever. Choir leaders took the cards and pinned them to doors. Foremen taped them to beams. Teachers wrote the words on boards with chalk and turned it into a game. Who can keep the slow count and smile while doing it? Cole stood with a group of engineers and mapped the first hours like a road. Arya would lead the voice at the main node at dawn and at dusk, never more, then 10 minutes at a time. In between, neighborhood circles would practice breath and tone near the smaller rings. Cole would move between rings to teach the hold posture. He taught it with no mystery. Feet under shoulders, knees soft, spine long, breath simple. Do not chase the light. Let the light come to you, like a tide coming under a boat that is tied well. Sarah set a rule that slid into every plan like a quiet spine. 15 minutes of work, 30 minutes of rest. Warm water between. Hum with care. Write every feeling. Stop before the hands shake, not after. If you feel lightheaded, sit. If you want to cry, breathe and let your face do what it wants. The city learned that kindness can be not only a feeling, but a method. Counselor Leth took a different road. She visited the rings with a small team and checked seals and conduits. She asked each steward to show the cutoff levers. She read the rules aloud again and again as if each place were the first time. She did not bark. She did not flatter. She wore the look of a person who had decided that precision was also a kind of love. The first afternoon felt like setting a bridge by hand over a long water. People came in ones and twos to the open squares where old stones made perfect circles. They stood shyly at first, then less shy. A baker with flour on his sleeves hummed 3 quiet notes while his daughter held his fingers. An old gardener hummed in a tone that sat almost under hearing and made the leaves rattle a little on a fig tree. A pair of builders who spent their days on high beams stood like posts and matched Araya's count with their breath from where they worked, just to see if the ring at the edge of their yard would listen. It did. Cole walked between the rings, with long, calm steps. He carried nothing sharp and nothing heavy. He carried a bundle of cargo hose strapped with cloth ties and a small bag with his field bands and a coil of kitchen line. No one asked why a soldier carried hose and kitchen line. It made sense the moment you saw him hold them. He was a man who trusted simple tools, and that trust reached other people like heat from a pot. Each time a ring listened, tiny pale threads ran into the floor, and then slid along the walls in the direction of the main node. The glow was not bright. It was a whisper of light, a river seen from above at dusk. The city's map began to change without being redrawn. People started to talk about the lines as if they were streets. We live near the 3rd line, a mother told her son, as if it had always been true. At Stone Orchard, the 1st, trouble showed itself in the way that trouble often does, by trying to look like an honest mistake. The relic's cooling tank, just a simple jacket that kept the small stone comfortable when it warmed, shuddered and went still. The dial dropped. The pump whispered and then gave a small sigh and stopped. The room did not crash into panic. Kellen walked straight to the tank, set her hand on the side, and then bent to the feed valve. It was closed. She knew she had left it open. She did not pretend surprise. "Someone touch this," she said in a plain voice. Not the wind. Cole was at the window, showing 3 boys how to slow their count without puffing their cheeks. He turned at once and came to kneel by the tank. His hand checked the same valve in the small filter case below it. The filter case was missing its mesh. The mesh would not have fallen out on its own. "Counselor," Kellen called, without raising her tone. Leth stepped inside from the yard, read the scene in one sweep and wrote 2 words. Sabotage possible. She did not point. She did not accuse. She placed a guard at the back door and a guard at the front and then asked the names of every person within the fence, including her own. She sent Sarah a quiet note. Sarah read it and looked at Arya's face for any change. The princess's color held steady. Cole did not look for the person who had done it. He went straight to the nearest shed and returned with the cargo hose from his bundle, 2 copper clamps, and a bucket. He tied the hose to the tank's intake, ran it to the kitchen sink, and opened the tap. Water moved through the hose in a pushy, joyful way. He put his hand on the tank. The temperature began to fall 1 small degree at a time. The relic stayed wrapped, quiet, and untroubled. "Low-tech fix," Kellen said softly. "Rude but kind," Cole said. "Like pouring water on a friend's hands after the work is done." The 3 boys who had been learning to breathe stared at the hose as if it were a magic snake. Cole grinned at them. "You can laugh," he said, and they did softly, and then went back to practicing their slow counts. In 2, out 2, soft tone, as if the room had always had a green hose across the floor. The cooling problem was not the only hand turned the wrong way that day. At the North Market ring, a seller of dyed cloth used his tall bolts to cage the ring from the wind and keep dust off. The cloth made the ring's small light bounce back on itself and heat the rim. Dea, the braided engineer, saw it in time. She and her team moved the bolts and gave the seller a better place for his colors at the edge of the square. They gave him a small sign for his stall. "Thank you for keeping the ring in the breeze." He stood taller after that, proud to be useful without standing in the circle. The king came out of the palace in a plain coat and walked a triangle. Palace, market ring, main node, 3 times before sunset. He spoke to people without a train of aides. He held a child while her mother hummed. He stood at the main node at dusk with Arya on one side and Cole on the other, and he did not speak a speech. He set his hand on the rail and nodded for the work to begin. Arya did not look like a singer in a great hall. She looked like a person who had learned to listen to herself and then taught that listening to others. She began the 3 soft steps. The city, which had practiced all afternoon, found the steps and walked them. Cole stood with the band warm at his chest and did what he had promised to do. He held. He did not force. He let the ring find him like a river finds its bank. Lines. Lit. Not fire lines, breath lines. You could watch them move along the streets and roofs, not like lightning, but like a slow wave in a field. The grid rose a hand's width and then 2. Sarah's hand sat on Arya's wrist. The clock over the ring kept its count. 41:12:05, 41:12:04. The city reached quiet after the 3rd note and stayed there. When it was done, they rested. The resting was not a small thing. It was important, so they did it well. People learned to sit with their backs against warm walls for a few minutes. They learned to drink a small cup of broth or water with a slice of lemon. They learned to keep their jaws soft. They learned to mark the feeling of enough and praise themselves for stopping on time. That night, the thin storm listened to them. The high probe sent its picture to every square that had a slate. The red points moved like patient, curious insects testing a window screen. Then the arc tightened. The numbers shifted. Kellen adjusted the measure and wrote the new time in the margin. The swarm had picked up speed. Estimated time to capital edge, 52 hours. The message went to the chamber at once. Leth read it to the king. The king set a finger on the clock by the ring. 40:58:10. The space between 52 and 40 was no longer a broad road. It was a narrow ledge. "We cannot move the window," Dea said. "No," said Leth, "but we can meet it walking." They changed the plan only in small ways. More circles practicing in the morning, fewer in the hottest hour. Choir leaders shared a hand sign to stop early if throats grew tight. Cole added one lesson to his hold talk: what to do when fear comes up like a bird in the chest. He taught people to greet it and let it perch on the rail and not spend the breath chasing it away. "Fear can sit with us," he told a group of students near a school ring. "It can watch. It does not get to run the switch." One student, a girl with ink on her fingers, wrote that sentence on her sleeve cuff with a tiny pen. The next morning, the saboteurs showed a sharper edge. At the main node, just as Arya lifted her chin for the first soft steps, the coolant for the big ring's field dampers went down. It did not fail like a machine fails. It stopped like a hand had turned a wheel far away. The ring's edge warmed. The numbers in Dea's board crept up the way the sun creeps up a wall at noon. Cole did not wait to see if someone else would move. He was already running toward the service trench, the same bag on his shoulder, the same bundle of cargo hoses. Dea ran ahead and dropped into the trench. The pipe there was cold and dry. She looked at Cole and shook her head once. The supply had been cut at the tower,